Shock Piece: The Search for Freedom, a novel by C. Nguyen. Chapter 40: Public Housing and University, 1982. Drin plodded through her high school years miraculously and moved on. "What time are we going to start?" Drin asked. The evening was cool, with an occasional breeze disturbing the yellow hibiscus bush at the corner. Sipping hot jasmine tea with an air of sophistication, the young adults were sitting on the grass outside Drin's house. They were discussing their plans for the upcoming Mid-Autumn or Moon Festival event. The warm and pleasing acoustic guitar sounds blended in with the gentle rustling of leaves, creating an enchanting atmosphere in the spring evening. "Look at the moon, shining almost perfect," Drin added. "Not too late so the kids can march with us, of course," Tu said, stopping his music for a while. "Say, 7 p.m.? Not too early either, because we want to light the candles in the lanterns, don't we? It has to be dark outside," Luke said. "Yeah, the idea is for the kids to sing the song of Dut Drum Tu and parade with brightly lit lanterns around the neighborhood," Kim added. The song Dut Drum Tu, or Moon Festival, is the Vietnamese folklore song that children used to sing while marching with their lanterns around the neighborhoods back home. "We want them to learn the song first, don't we?" Drin asked. "But I don't remember the whole song. The first part of the lyric is easy, but I forget the latter part." She smiled sheepishly. "Oh well, it's not too hard. I can write them down for you, but they can always repeat after us, or we adults can sing as loud as possible," Quan said. In those days, printers and computers, or word processors, were not as common as now. Most documents were typed and photocopied or handwritten. It was a laborious process that modern technology had helped cut short and turned into a simple procedure. Now it was almost taken for granted. "Who's in charge of buying mooncakes?" Nam asked. "T is, but Kim and I are buying the lanterns and candles. So far, we have 18 kids and 12 of us. We don't have enough money to get one lantern each. It has to be shared unless someone is going to cough up with some more cash." Drin smiled at her last comment. They had pooled some cash for the planned expense from their few savings, hoping to create an event that introduced the kids to the Moon Festival and refreshed themselves with some back-home nostalgia. For thousands and thousands of years, the Shang dynasty from the early 10th century BC celebrated harvest time during the full moon period of August, or the 8th month of the lunar calendar. The tradition started on the 15th day and lasted for a few days afterward, and continued to be honored by most Oriental cultures well into modern times. They also believed the brightest and the most beautiful moon happens at that same time. Hence, De Trum Tu, or Moon Festival, is celebrated during this beautiful full moon season. It falls during September or October of the Gregorian calendar. There are many myths explaining the meaning of the Moon Festival, and to this day, anyone with an imaginative mind could just make up their own beliefs. Traditionally, squared mooncakes are specially made and consumed during the festive season. The shape of the cake was believed to complement the symbol of fertility in Oriental culture. A square and a circle are signified as a successful birth of a healthy offspring and a fully recovered mother, respectively. Therefore, during the Moon Festival, it also provides an opportunity for young couples to ask for a blessing. There are also mythological characters associated with the moon. One was the beautiful immortal moon goddess, Jihang, whose ancient admirer, Chukui, would only catch her silhouette once a year during a full moon in August, when he forever dreamt of a reunion with his undying love. In modern times, the Moon Festival becomes the children's festival in Vietnamese culture, celebrated with brightly lit, various shaped lanterns ranging from the natural living creatures like fish, rabbits, butterflies, bees, mice, to boats, houses, and even mythological objects. Hey, I can almost see the moon goddess floating around charmingly up there in her beautiful flowing dress, and her forever 1,000-year admirer, Chú Cười, sitting on a tree stump, totally spellbound looking at her, wishing, wishing, and wishing, Quan said excitedly. Yeah. That Chú Cười looks very much like you, Quan, Drin replied. You have so many crushes on so many moon goddesses that you'll end up like him if you're not careful. Always a secret admirer looking from afar without her noticing at all. The teenagers and young adults of the Bonnyrigg Housing Commission complex were boat people arriving in Sydney at approximately the same time and ended up in the same area a few years later. The public housing complex catered for at least 1,000 families. At one time, most of the residents were Vietnamese boat people of the 1980s. The youngsters were quick to recognize the need to connect. Friendships were formed easily as they were sharing the same difficult start and the same longing to speak their mother tongue in the still brand new environment, where the English language remained a major struggle. They were thrilled to be surrounded by people of the same cultural background, and their bare living conditions hardly bothered them at all. Having their companions and living in a house with front and backyards, a lounge, a kitchen, a dining room, and bedrooms to share between two persons only, not four or more, they were happy and content. Their compact circle included more than 10 families, whose kids were mostly university undergraduates at Sydney, New South Wales, or Macquarie University or the University of Technology. Some were also high school students. The group used to come to Cabramatta train station together every morning to travel to university. It was almost a social event, as there could be 20 of them in one train compartment at one time, going to Lidcombe, Regent's Park, Redfern, or Central Station, then scattering to various faculties: general science, engineering, architecture, computer technology, law, art, nursing, pharmacy, dentistry, medicine. The children of the Housing Commission residents or other similar places were emerging from the lowest socio-economic background to become professionals of the future. Mixed with the hardship was a carefree feeling of camaraderie, helping them to sustain the days ahead and to sail through university to reach their final goal. They embraced their freedom wholeheartedly, savoring the delicious taste of peace and stability without having to worry about the danger of war and its ugliness. The youngsters were never a concern for their parents. They were rowdy and mischievous, perhaps, but they grew up gradually without overstepping any unlawful boundary. Shortly after they left Bonnyrigg, it was upgraded and transformed into a new community by the Public-Private Partnership Project, which was absorbed by the New South Wales Housing Department in the 1990s. With his savings from various odd jobs and from his parents' allowance, Tu purchased an old Volkswagen Beetle 1960s model for a mere $50. Ironically, he had to pay $80 to tow it to his house and managed to fix its engine back to life. It was, however, a prized possession with many jealous admirers. He used it to drive his brothers to the station. His house was just 200 meters from the back door of Drin's house, separated by the park. Normally, Drin and Kim had to walk and catch a bus from Bonnyrigg to Cabramatta station. Then, Drin would go to Redfern, walking another half an hour to Sydney University to start her day. When Kim finally reached Central, she had to catch another bus to New South Wales University. Every day the trip took 1.5 hours each way. Since having his old Beetle, Tu was more popular among the group, and even now had the two sisters sharing the ride to Cabramatta station as well. Even though the good old Beetle refused to cooperate sometimes, and they all had to push it to start. They were delighted at being able to cut short the first part of the trip, saving them at least half an hour every morning. Quickly, we're going to be late again, Drin urged. Last time he went off without waiting for us, Kim, and we had to chase after the car. Remember? That cheeky devil. He doesn't want to make it easy for us. He turns it into a cat and mouse game if we're late. Hurry up. You can run over there first and stall him, then I'll catch up, Drin. Kim was hurriedly making their sandwiches. Using a butter knife, Kim spread a thin layer on the sliced bread, then placed a piece of ham, some cheese, and tomatoes on top before wrapping it hastily in the plastic wrap. She then threw it towards Drin and quickly started making another one. Drin cupped her hands to catch it, but the sandwich landed on the floor. Hey, lousy thrower, she protested. She picked it up, then ran out of the house as fast as she could toward Tu's house, nodding her head and yelling, "Bye, mother!" "Hey, lousy catcher!" Kim shouted back. She hurriedly went after her sister, carrying her sandwich in her hands and echoing, "Bye, mother!" She waved her hands dismissively and shook her head disapprovingly, then went back to her mountain of pattern pieces. It was always hectic with them in the morning, regardless of how early she tried to wake them up. Wake up, wake up! It's 7 o'clock already. Hurry or you'll be late again." Ignoring her mother, Drin would not open her eyes and try to steal another 10 minutes without looking at her watch, knowing that her mother usually woke them at least 10 or 15 minutes earlier than the said time. Routinely, she then knew that mother would go to the kitchen, turn on her Singer industrial sewing machine, and start her day laboring at the pile of pattern materials. Lying in bed, Drin would wait for the next wake-up call to come from the kitchen, enjoying her exquisitely golden extra 10 minutes. Then she would listen again to the churning of her mother's sewing machine as the final kick before bolting upright and dashing to the bathroom to wash her face, brush her teeth, and change into jeans and t-shirt. In record time of 15 minutes, Drin would be out of the door by 7:25 a.m. and running toward Tu's house, a sandwich in hand and a bag over her shoulder. It was the same frenzied race against the clock for both Kim and Drin every morning. The earlier their mother tried to wake them, the more they dragged their feet. "It's a no-win situation here. I really wonder why. You girls are hopeless," mother would shout in frustration one day. They would be bolt upright at her first call for the next few days. And then everything would return to the rush and chaos again when the heat died down. When Drin was leaving her house with the sun bright and high in summer or gloomy and dark in winter, and when she was returning home in twilight or in the dark, her mother's position would be very much on the same spot, glued to her stool in front of her sewing machine, toiling away until 7:30 p.m. every evening. During those 12 hours when they were studying away, her mother would be at home trying to make their lives better and utilizing her skills as a home machinist. Sometimes her mother would cry out in frustration that she had not understood the instructions given to her and that the whole batch had been spoiled. "Oh dear, I did not change to a different thread for their hems, and now they all have to be undone and redone," mother said sorrowfully. Then they would all stay by her side after school, trying to help, unpicking the threads one by one for her to redo the whole order and doubling her time and effort. Sometimes their assistance was needed too, if she was falling behind. "Oh, do we have to?" Luke would say. He was eager to be out with his friends. He was going out with a local high school student. "Can I watch Happy Days now and help later this evening?" Jen would try to bargain. "Don't cheat, children," Kim would sternly reprimand with an authoritative voice. "You guys have to do your bit before going off anywhere. Come on, if everyone lends a hand, we'll be finished in no time," V would say, and that was the final word for all. She would then give a "don't mess with me" look. On most weekends, they would help mother turn the newly completed clothes right side out and fold them neatly in place. ready to be picked up by the contractor. Regardless of complaints or protests, they all joined in. Her mother's mountain of pattern pieces emitted a fine dust, which settled in every crevice of the house when she was doing overlocking or industrial sewing. Its churning noise remained in Trin's mind all the time they were living in Bonnyrigg. The little house with enough space and garden for everyone was dear to her memory. Kim and Trin had the front garden for their flowers, the first flower garden in their life. They attempted to grow roses, azaleas, daffodils, carnations, and other varieties that seemed exotic to them. Some thrived and some died, but the sisters were enjoying their flower garden as much as their mother was. Mother had her garden, with which she was equally delighted. Within a couple of months, she had managed to turn it into something similar to the one back in her country home, with her herbs and plants. She asked everyone she knew for seeds or young tropical plants and all Vietnamese mints, such as spearmint, pointed leaf mint, heartleaf mint, lemongrass, banana, sugarcane bushes, chili, pawpaw, mango, longan, and guava trees, along with numerous other plants and herbs. Walking past a garden and looking at its plants and herbs, Drin would know if the home's occupiers were Vietnamese. Her mother's garden was very much the same. The garden kept her mother busy and filled up whatever time she had left in her day. She would rush out to water them, pick up dead leaves, mulch the roots, sort her dispute with the caterpillars and snails, or just admire the vigorous green shoots and the fruits of her plants. All of it was justification for her hard work. "I don't have time to feel homesick. That's the best way," she said. "I don't want to have any idle time. I want to move forward to the future and not dwell in the past, because if I turn my head, I will have to remember, and it's painful to remember. My heart skips several beats if I start to remember. Perhaps I will have the courage to reminisce about the past when everything settles down, when I don't feel an aching inside for the wish to return home. But not now. Now I'm haunted by that frightful thought, that we could not stand being away from our homeland and only wish we hadn't left. I can't breathe sometimes if I let my mind drift back to those memories of the house we were living in, of your grandmother's face the last time I was saying goodbye to her at the bus station. She could not cry, and I could not weep as much as I had wanted because we could not risk exposing ourselves. She was standing there, holding her emotions intact and watching me leave, not knowing when or if we would see each other again. It's so difficult. I must forget these sentimental feelings," her mother concluded dismissively. "We're here, safe and sound. I'm grateful to Buddha and the Almighty who blessed us with luck throughout our journey. I vowed never to forget the day we left, but I have also vowed that I will not be dragged down by such desperation again." She often told them that when they asked her to slow down. Drin went to Sydney University during her stay at Bonnyrigg, and the university was a dear place for Trin to remember, where she met a group of 30 or more Vietnamese undergraduates. They normally gathered around the Wentworth building for lunch or a general catch-up. After a few years of high school, somehow she passed her higher school certificate to enroll into a Bachelor of Pharmacy course. It must have been her math, Trin was convinced. Her 4-unit math course definitely had bailed her out. Once, during exam season in university, Trin brought in a cassette player and started her dance classes in the basement of the Fisher Library, teaching cha-cha-cha, tango, bebop, and similar steps in between her tedious hours of studying for examinations. "You're a daring girl, Trin," one of her friends would comment. "Ah, but I've got students," she'd say and smile. She was playing her style of music, and half a dozen of them would gather in the remotest corner of the library and follow her dance steps, enjoying a few carefree moments in their student life. Those years went by pleasantly, but with the same difficulty of communicating in English. She often had to use a dictionary to translate her text. It then took her triple the amount of time to understand the context before having to memorize them for the tests. Sometimes her reply was odd, because she could not get their meaning. When someone asked, "Hi Trin, how you going?" "I'm going by train," Trin would reply. "No, I mean, how are you going?" "Yes, I am going by train," Trin repeated, feeling very smart about her answer. There was another time when a preacher started asking the crowd after his session of the origin of mankind. "So, in answer to God, where do you come from?" "I come from Vietnam," quickly and proudly. She would try to speak loudly. Her English had not improved a lot since the day she was confronted by a staff member in the East Hills hostel asking about her skin condition. The server came to her table and said something to Trin that none of them could understand. Luckily, one of the staff was Vietnamese. She approached their table seeing that they needed help. Listening attentively for a while, she explained to Trin gravely in Vietnamese, "Have you eaten chicken in the last few days? If it was in a box, then you must go and see the doctor immediately because you are not allowed in the canteen." "Oh dear, why am I not allowed in there? I don't think I had any chicken in a box at all." She was afraid now at hearing the words "not allowed." "You must stay inside your room," the Vietnamese lady said. "But no, I'm sure I did not eat chicken in a box. Whatever chicken I had was from here. The canteen was the only place I had my food. So how come eating chicken in a box prevents me from eating in the dining room?" Trin was clearly puzzled and terrified. "How am I going to have my meals then?" "We'll bring your meal to your room, dear." At this, Trin reluctantly walked back to her room, feeling confused but less nervous of being starved to death because of her trouble of eating chicken in a box. In the end, fortuitously, after being examined by a doctor, it dawned on her much later that she had said chicken pox. It was contagious, and she had to be confined to her room until her skin had cleared up. The Vietnamese lady had got confused with the condition of chicken pox and translated it as chicken in a box. Her English continued to be limited during her first few years at university, in both speaking and writing, that when she was asked to write a paragraph for a classmate in the yearbook, she did not know how. Struggling with it for weeks, she finally submitted her contribution. Lucky for her that it was anonymous, and no one would know who was writing for whom. But her heart sank with shame when someone posted her paragraph on the community wall with a comment. How could someone with bad English like this be allowed to enroll into this course? But then, Drin was the first in her family to graduate with a degree. The timid, non-English speaking refugee had gone through her years of study with a dictionary and her textbooks hand in hand and came out of it successfully. She was so proud of her daughter. Looking from afar, her chest swelled up with pride, and she could not help crying seeing a small figure of her little girl on the high platform receiving her Bachelor of Pharmacy degree from the Dean of her faculty from Sydney University. Trin became a pharmacist in charge of a large pharmacy a few years later, but she often encountered confrontations like, "No, I'd like to speak to a pharmacist in charge, please, not a shop assistant," when presented herself to the customers. Her diminutive figure and innocent childlike face masked her authoritative duty for many years afterward.